My name is Sarah, and for the past 5 years I've worked as a maid in Mr. Harrison's mansion. It's a place of quiet luxury, where every surface gleams and every object has a story, though none as complex as the man who owns it. Mr. Harrison, or Arthur, as I eventually learned to call him, was a widower. His wife, a beautiful, vibrant woman named Eleanor, had passed away suddenly almost 6 years ago. Her absence hung in the air of the house like a forgotten perfume, subtle, ever-present, and deeply melancholic. When I first started, Arthur was a ghost in his own home. He rarely left his study, and when he did, his eyes seemed to look through me, not at me. My job was to maintain the house, to keep it immaculate, a silent testament to a life that had once been full. I polished the antique furniture that Eleanor had loved, dusted the photographs of their travels, and changed the sheets in their vast, empty bedroom. Each task felt like a ritual, a silent act of remembrance. I often wondered about them, about their life together. The house, in its grand stillness, whispered stories of laughter, of shared moments, and now, of profound loss. I come from a small town, a world away from the gilded cages of wealth. My family wasn't poor, but we certainly weren't rich. We understood the value of hard work and simple pleasures. I'd taken this job out of necessity to help my ailing mother, and though the work was demanding, I found a strange kind of peace in it. There was a rhythm to cleaning, a satisfaction in bringing order to chaos, even if the chaos was mostly just dust and disarray. Over time, I started to notice small changes in Arthur. It began with the books. He was a prodigious reader, and I'd often find new piles of books by his bedside table, or scattered on the armrests of the grand sofas in the living room. At first, they were mostly historical tomes, heavy and serious. But then, I started seeing novels, sometimes even poetry. It was a tiny shift, but to me it felt significant. It felt like a subtle stirring of life, a hint that he was perhaps looking beyond the confines of his own grief. One afternoon, I was cleaning the study. It was usually off limits when he was working, but he was out that day, attending some rare business meeting. The room was always filled with the scent of old paper and leather, a comforting smell, like a wise old friend. I was carefully dusting a large globe when I heard the front door open. He was back early. My heart gave a little jump. I always felt a bit like an intruder in his private spaces. He came into the study, his face tired, his tie loosened. He didn't seem surprised to see me. He just nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. He went to his desk, picked up a letter opener, and started turning it over and over in his fingers. I continued my dusting, feeling the quiet tension in the room. "Sarah?" he said suddenly, his voice raspy, a little softer than usual. I turned. "Yes, Mr. Harrison? Do you ever read?" he asked, not looking at me but at the letter opener. The question caught me off guard. "Yes, I do," I replied a little shyly. "Mostly at night after work." He nodded again. "What kind of books?" "Anything really," I said, thinking of the worn paperbacks by my bed. "Stories mostly, sometimes things about nature or history." He looked up then, and for the first time his eyes truly met mine. They were a startling blue, and in them I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. Curiosity, perhaps, or even a touch of vulnerability. "There's a book on my desk," he said, gesturing with his chin. "A novel. I just finished it. You might like it." I looked at the book. It was a beautifully bound edition, a classic I recognized but had never read. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," I said, genuinely touched. "I'd like that very much." That was the beginning of our slow, hesitant dance towards something more. He started leaving books for me, always with a quiet, almost shy word. We'd have short conversations about the characters, the themes, the way the author had crafted the story. These weren't the usual employer-employee exchanges. These were different. They were about shared thoughts, about feelings. One evening, I was in the kitchen, preparing my small dinner before heading home. He walked in, something he rarely did. He was holding a glass of whiskey, and he leaned against the counter watching me. "You work too hard, Sarah," he said, his voice low. I smiled faintly. "It's my job, Mr. Harrison." "Arthur," he corrected gently. "Please call me Arthur." My heart gave another little jump. "Arthur," I repeated, tasting the name on my tongue. It felt strangely intimate, like a secret shared. We talked for a while that night. About his day, about his work, about the quiet emptiness of the house. And then he asked me about my life, about my family, about my dreams. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone in years. About my mother's illness, about my hope of saving enough money to open a small bakery, a dream I'd tucked away years ago. He listened intently, his blue eyes fixed on me, a warmth beginning to spread through the cold corners of his gaze. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the atmosphere in the house began to change. The silence remained, but it was no longer heavy with grief. It was a comfortable silence, often punctuated by our quiet conversations. He started having his meals in the informal dining room instead of his study. Sometimes, if I was still working, he'd ask me to join him for a cup of tea or a glass of water. He began to see me not just as the maid, but as Sarah, as a person with her own thoughts, her own feelings, her own story. And I, in turn, began to see him as Arthur, a man burdened by sorrow, but capable of immense kindness and a deep, quiet yearning for connection. There was a particular rainy afternoon, the kind of day where the sky seems to weep alongside you. I was polishing the silver in the dining room, and he was sitting by the large window, staring out at the downpour. He looked particularly pensive that day, his shoulders slumped. I finished my task and was about to leave when he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Today would have been Eleanor's birthday. My heart ached for him. I didn't know what to say, what to do. I just stood there, my hand still holding the polishing cloth. He turned to me, and his eyes were glistening. "I miss her so much, Sarah. Every single day." And in that moment, something shifted irrevocably between us. The barrier of employer and employee, of wealth and service, simply dissolved. He wasn't the untouchable billionaire anymore. He was just a man, hurting, vulnerable, and deeply lonely. Without thinking, I walked over to him, and gently, I put my hand on his arm. His skin was warm beneath my touch. He looked at my hand, then up at my face, a surprised, questioning look in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Arthur," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I truly am." He didn't pull away. Instead, he reached up and covered my hand with his own, his grip surprisingly firm. We stood like that for a long moment, the rain drumming against the window, the shared silence filled with an unspoken understanding. It felt like a dam breaking, a release of years of pent-up sorrow. From that day on, our relationship deepened. The boundaries blurred even further. He started sharing more with me, memories of Eleanor, his fears about the future, his quiet regrets. And I, in turn, shared more of my hopes and dreams, the small joys and challenges of my life outside the mansion walls. One evening, he called me into the living room. The fireplace was lit, casting a warm, flickering glow on the antique rugs and paintings. He was sitting on the sofa, a book open on his lap, but he wasn't reading. He looked up when I entered, his blue eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Sarah," he began, his voice a little hesitant. I feel something with you that I haven't felt in a very long time." He paused, searching for the right words. A connection, a comfort, a desire. My breath caught in my throat. Desire. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning, with possibility. My own heart was pounding, a wild drumbeat against my ribs. I had felt it too, this growing warmth, this inexplicable pull towards him. It had surprised me, startled me, but I couldn't deny its presence. I didn't say anything, just stood there, my gaze locked with his. I saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope and the fear. He was putting himself out there, risking rejection, risking further pain. He stood up then, and slowly, he walked towards me. He stopped just a few feet away, close enough for me to feel the warmth radiating from him, close enough to see the tiny lines around his beautiful blue eyes. know this is unexpected, he said, his voice barely a whisper, and perhaps inappropriate. But I can't ignore it anymore, Sarah. I don't want to. My own feelings had been a tangled mess of confusion and longing. He was my employer, a man from a different world. But he was also kind, intelligent, and deeply, wonderfully human. And he had seen me, truly seen me, when no one else had in a very long time. I took a shaky breath. I feel it too, Arthur, I confessed, my voice barely audible. I feel it too. A smile, tentative but genuine, spread across his face. It transformed him, chasing away the shadows that had lingered there for so long. He reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek. His touch was warm, comforting, and utterly intoxicating. He leaned in then, slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't want to. I wanted this. I wanted him. His lips met mine, soft and hesitant at first, then growing in confidence, in tenderness. It was a kiss that spoke of years of unspoken longing, of healing, of a fragile new beginning. It tasted of whiskey and of hope. From that night on, our love blossomed, quietly, away from the prying eyes of the world. Our secret sanctuary was the mansion, the very place that had once been a tomb of grief. He took me to places I'd only dreamed of, showed me a world of art and music and beauty. But it wasn't the opulence that drew me in. It was the way he looked at me, the way he listened, the way he made me feel cherished and seen. Our journey wasn't without its challenges. There were whispers, of course. The Maid and the Billionaire. It was a story too juicy for some to ignore. But Arthur, for all his quiet nature, was fiercely protective. He didn't care about society's judgments. He only cared about us. He helped me realize my dream of opening a bakery. He believed in me, supported me, and cheered me on every step of the way. And I, in turn, brought light and laughter back into his life, helped him to heal, and reminded him that even after profound loss, love can find its way back, sometimes in the most unexpected of forms. We built a life together, a life that was rich not in material possessions, but in shared laughter, in quiet moments of understanding, and in a love that felt as real and as natural as breathing. The mansion, once a monument to a past love, became a home, filled with the warmth of a new one. And I, the simple maid, found my own unexpected happiness in the arms of a man who had, against all odds, found desire again, with me.